Kingston Springs Regional Planning Commission meeting is now in session. Roll call voting members: Keith Allgood.
Present.
Tony Thompson, absent. Tony Gross.
Here.
Mike Hargis.
Here.
Lauren Hill, here. Mike Patnode. Craig Kitch. Marie Spafford.
Here.
Bob Stoller.
Here.
Sharon Armstrong.
Here.
Peter Kimmerow is here by request only. John Lawless.
Here.
We have quorum. We have a motion to approve the March 14 Planning Commission meeting minutes.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Motion to approve April 11, 2024 Planning Commission meeting agenda.
Madam Chairman, I have a correction on item 10 under new business.
Okay.
Towards the end of the paragraph, after zone, FEMA NFIP X zone, everything after zone needs to be stricken from the record. It's a leftover from last month.
Okay, so property located in FEMA NFIP X zone.
Recommendation, yeah,
And
everything
then
regarding
remove everything else.
173 Ivan Hills Road.
Okay, do we have a motion to approve that change?
Need a motion.
Yeah, I believe after.
Motion.
Motion to.
Second?
Yes.
Motion made and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, thank you. Now, motion to approve minutes as agended for the April 11 Planning Commission.
Motion to approve.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? The agenda is approved. Community input, which is public comments shall be limited to 3 minutes for all regular agenda items and items removed from the agenda, and an overall time limit for all comments on agenda items to 10 minutes unless extended by vote of the majority of the Planning Commission. The chairman shall limit comments to the agenda items to relevant comments and shall restrict comments that are disruptive in nature. Do we have anyone here that wishes to provide community input? Okay, please come forward and state your name and where you live.
My name is Bill Rogers. I'm at 1660 South Arpith Road. And I'd like to comment on the item 10. That needs to be commented now and not after item 10 is discussed, I assume.
That's fine, sir. What are your comments?
Okay. This is, of course, rezoning.
If I may, I'm sorry, I apologize to Mr. Rogers and to the chairman of the board. They're allowed on an agenda item, they comment during the meeting. Public comments are reserved for things that are not on the agenda. So if it's an agenda item, it's presented and then they're allowed to comment during that time because it's on the published agenda.
Okay, so it's not during.
Well, if
My
that's the item
apologies
that
if
we should
I'm incorrect
discuss,
on
that
this.
occurs during the meeting because all of that gets captured. Sometimes people come in and want to talk about things that aren't on the agenda. That's what the public comment is for. So it comes up on the agenda.
Therefore,
and
your
they're
comments
allowed
will-
to comment
we'll
once
discuss this
lay
when we get to
groundwork
item
for
10.
What's been proposed.
That's what my understanding was, too.
Okay, my apologies.
I do have another besides item 10.
All right, sir.
And I've commented about this before, about South Harpeth Road. Kingston Springs needs to put some signs out there on bumps, caution, dangerous area. We've got areas the size of this room that people are bumping across mud on. I know we've had at least 2 cars go off in the ditch. We're in a very dangerous situation there, and I don't know, we've been working on this for 3 years, I guess, on the road. And I know Ms. Armstrong is working on this with one of the other addendum items. But I would just like to bring up the fact that please, if we can, let's get some caution signs out there before somebody really gets hurt. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Do we have any other comments on items that are not going to be discussed during the course of our meeting? Okay. Community input is closed. Declaration of conflict: in the event that any member shall have a personal interest of any kind in a matter before the Kingston Springs Municipal Regional Planning Commission, he or she shall disclose their interest. Conflict of interest is defined in the Municipal Code, Title 1, Chapter 4, Section 1-402 through Section 1-04. Are there any conflicts? None. We'll move forward. Old business, Ellerslie PUD, consideration of approval of amended grading plans. Ms. Armstrong?
Yes, ma'am, thank you. If you'll remember, staff was allowed to review the grading plans in order to inhibit any further damage on the Ellerslie property due to the spring rain. So the city engineer vetted the plans, I looked at the plans in your packet directly behind the minutes, which is from last month. This plan, the drainage calculation, and the revisions that it went through with their engineer and our engineer. We then vetted them and they were issued a permit to continue the grading at that point. We asked for permission, which is a rare thing, for staff to do the review and allow them to move forward so that with the rain that's occurred between now and when the plans could come back here, would not further inhibit the residents. So those are in your packet and formal approval by the planning commission is required.
So they're meeting our requirements.
They do. The city engineer signed off on them about 5 weeks ago. So with the last set of revisions to recalculate the drainage to the road, because it's still showing water flowing over West Kingston Springs Road with the previous set of calculations, I have looked at it to make sure that it includes a note on it that they have to scope the sewer lines because of the previous incident that we had. They have worked through all of their issues with Second South Cheatham. Second South Cheatham did the repair design and executed it. The developer did not. So everything has been resolved at this point. We can't guarantee this is going to fully address all of the runoff because sometimes given the topography, it's kind of trial and error. So, the city engineer is very comfortable with these plans and it's been a great deal of time with them, as have I. So,
Excellent.
staff
Excellent.
recommendation is that you approve
You
it.
recommend approval?
Yes, sir.
I'll
Okay,
make a motion, we approve.
Second.
motion to approve and second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Okay, Golf Course Tennessee, update on maintenance facility, proposed site plan, performance bond requirements for construction damage to South Harpeth Road, the Country Club Road within the city limits of the town of Kingston Springs. Soil and erosion issues reported by Mimi Rose. Consideration of approval for performance bond for repairs to South Harpeth Road.
Since our last meeting, we advised the Planning Commission that we were determining the linear foot cost for the temporary repaving and repair of South Harpeth Road, because before everybody was taking the detour, the bridge was not in. Now they're turning out and going across the new bridge, and there's a lot of damage to South Harpeth Road all the way up to CC Road. So the golf club has been made aware of that. They have been provided by the city engineer the per linear foot cost. We're still not negotiating, but having discussions with them. We would like them to, from the city limits all the way to CC Road, because that's where the damage is occurring. There's still a great deal of dump truck and occasionally semi-truck traffic coming in and out of there. The build out for that particular area for the maintenance facility and the new office building is going to be at least another 6 to 9 months. They're still working through an easement agreement with the Doris property because they don't directly abut at the maintenance facility location, South Harpeth Road. So we've advised them that the regulations require a permanent, perpetual easement agreement with the maintenance between the two of them. At that location, with a rough tape measure, it's 17 feet, 1 3/4 inches of width. When the dump trucks are turning out, they're exceeding the pavement. They're plowing ruts on both sides. They're also crossing the ditch from that location, which is stopping it up. They're doing a pretty good job of keeping that cleaned out. But as they get to the bridge abutment, the approach to the bridge is much wider than the road. And so the damage from the dump trucks is starting to degrade the concrete at the bridge location. So they're aware of all of these things. Those discussions are ongoing. The city has determined the linear foot cost and the length of the road that needs to be repaired. This will not be a permanent resurfacing because it's pointless to do the improvements that will be required if the Planning Commission approves the new site plan with the in and out driveway. If you approve that, then it will require them to widen that road because it's just not wide enough for that heavy traffic going in and out of there. And I would ask that the planning commission, if you have time, it's a short drive now that you'll have to go around, go by, cross the bridge. Once you come off the other, stop, get out, take a look at what you're seeing. So at the minimum, depending on what the traffic study brings, they have 65 parking spaces going in there. That facility will serve not only the greens maintenance at that location for both golf courses, it will also, for turf maintenance, staff parking will be there for a number of other operations, and the office staff, they're building a new office location there. So with that many vehicles coming in and out, there's also a proposed connection from the back of the maintenance facility to DBI from that location that's closer to South Harpeth Road than it is to coming in at the golf club primary entrance. So increased traffic. At the minimum, the road needs to be widened because it's not real safe in that location. And it's just not, that's a permanent request for them. Deliveries will go in that back door for large truck delivery to serve the clubhouse, the country club, the pro shop. So it'll be an ongoing thing. And then the increased traffic on that road for people that maintain the greens. So widening will be necessary. The regulations require it. It meets the minimum number of parking spaces and increased traffic to cause that to happen. So that'll be in phase 2 if the site plan is approved. But my advice to the planning commission would be to hold off on that until the construction is complete, because if you pave it permanently now, you're just gonna have to pave it again. So are there any questions on that section of it? Okay, soil and erosion, they have had, and I know they dislike it, but it's the language on their EPSC reports from their site person. There have been 2 soil and erosion and stormwater failures in the last several weeks. Both resulted in complaints from adjacent property owners. I asked Mr. Hooper, the engineer, to share with us what caused those failures, whether something just laid down, a wire, a fence, what happened. And he said on the first incident they were unable to determine what the cause or what the source was, but the water went into the creek, or the dirt went into the creek, soil did, and into the river beyond both times. They're having a little bit of trouble stabilizing 3 of the holes on the top of the ridge. My assumption is, since it's next to the ravine on the property, which then feeds into the creek, that's most likely the source of failure. So I've asked them to revisit that. I've also reminded them that if we have multiple incidences of this, that a stop will be issued until they repair the soil and erosion control. So I don't want to do that, but we have to address the issue. So that's all we had, is just an update. There's no action to be had.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Okay. Discussion of sidewalks from the Ellersby PUD to downtown Kingston Springs, an update?
Yes, ma'am. As you know, this is a standing item until we're done with the review and the consideration. I've had a conversation with the condo HOAs. They are now, they've asked last week for me to get an item to their board so they can consider it, their HOA board, to connect it from there. So, and I was assigned the end that comes off of phase 1 through and ends up next to Turnbull down here. So that was my end of it. So I have already we've spoken with the developer, met with him. He was amenable to coming across there. We will likely require them to put the utilities in a culvert as it goes down the side boundary so that we don't have any damage to anything on utilities on that edge. And then from there, it would go to the condo association. Mr. Francis, I placed a couple of phone calls to Mr. Francis, who owns the rental house adjacent to Turnbull. But it's a shorter path, less money. We don't have to acquire right-of-way if Mr. Francis agrees to allow the sidewalk to run in front of his rental property. Then there won't be any cost to acquire property to run a sidewalk. So they would be able to walk from Ellerslie all the way to right down here.
Great.
And come out there. So that's just an update. That's as far as we've gotten.
Okay, thank you. Okay. 9D, Roy B. McPherson, The Willows, 129 East Kingston Springs Road, core drill update.
Yes, I think everyone received a letter.
Yes.
I'm not going to characterize the letter. I would like to stick to the facts. This board in November of last year, because of a complaint, we had 2 complaints with the type of fill going on the property and the excess of the grading plan that was approved by almost an acre. So that was brought here. The Planning Commission approved expanding the grading permit. They then had to expand their plans with TDAC in order to remedy that. They were given a soil map, which you approved, a core map for drilling, and a report was required to be submitted to staff, the engineer, and I for review, and then to come to this body with that review. We still do not have a copy of that core report. So the gist of the complaint is that the stop work order is still in place. We can't lift it until we know what's in the soil and until we get the compaction from the report. So since the report has not been furnished, we're kind of between a rock and a hard place. The second item that was asked for was reconsideration of the approval of the development plan. We can't get to the development plan until we solve the problem with the grading plan because one feeds into the other. So the letter did not come in time to advertise that agenda item. It came after advertising. The agenda was advertised and published in the paper, but it will be on your agenda for next month.
Okay, so,
any questions that anybody has, I'll be happy
yeah,
to
we
answer.
requested the Corps
Pardon?
in November. We requested them to sample the soil and do the core drill in November.
That is correct. That
And
process,
has that been completed?
it has been completed.
Then why don't we have a copy of it?
I have no idea. I don't know how to answer that question. I was informed by the geotechnical engineering firm that it was completed and a copy was provided to the applicant.
Okay,
It just has not been furnished to the city.
so we can't move forward until we have any of this?
That is correct.
Okay.
We don't know what's
All right.
there now,
Fine.
so we don't know how to move forward until that is provided.
Okay. Any other comments, questions?
Yeah, has he been told that he needs to provide, has he been told that he needs to
Yes.
bring that to
Yes.
the city?
Multiple times.
And then he
When I advised him of this meeting and the fact that we couldn't, it wasn't advertised, so we couldn't, as a body, make a decision.
We can't make a decision anyway if we don't have those results.
He has been advised that it needed to be provided. He was advised right after I first learned that the core drill report was done. He was advised again 3 weeks after that,
Okay,
advised again.
All right.
So they're aware that they seem to be, a couple of his professionals seem to be surprised that we had not received it. And so we had a request from his civil engineer, not the geotech engineer, the civil engineer that did the plan set. And his question was, have you received it? No, we have not. So
All right,
until
well,
we get that,
at this point,
we can't take any
yeah,
action.
okay,
All right?
that ends that discussion. Okay. New business, recommendations by the Town of Kingston Springs City Commission. Requested rezone for the property located at 795 South Harpeth Road, map 100, parcel 00011.00, from agricultural district to R1 low-density residential district for the purpose of subdividing the property. Property located in FEMA NFIP X zone.
So I'm going to lay the framework for this request. In your packet, you have an application from the county. And for the new members, I'm going to have to walk you through this briefly. During the original growth planning process that occurred in 1999 through 2000, Kingston Springs and Cheatham County entered into an agreement that if a property lay within the growth boundary of the town of Kingston Springs, you would become the recommending body to the Cheatham County Commission on rezoning questions. In that circumstance, we are required by the contractual agreement approved by the state to use their zoning ordinance. If the property is then approved for rezoning, and a subdivision request is then made, it comes back to this planning commission, and we have to use our subdivision regulations in order to vet the subdivision proposal. So for those of you that are somewhat familiar with this, if you reach back a couple of years, it creates complications for us because in the county, they allow things to be developed. I'll give you an example, flood areas. They allow you to construct in a flood area. We do not. So sometimes those two documents, their zoning ordinance and our separate, don't meet in the middle. So that was one complication. The other is we had within our growth plan the ranchettes. We were visiting a hardship on those people. The subdivision was done a really long time ago, built out. There are multiple houses, multiple lots, a very large subdivision. And then after it was built out, the county assigned an E1 3-acre minimum zoning overlay. The lots are built out. So if they wanted a shed, a pool, they had to come to us for a recommendation to rezone to an area that would allow it. So it put a burden on people and doubling the process. In this particular case, this is relatively undeveloped land. Currently has one residence on it, the land that's being considered here tonight. The proposal is to have a relatively small lot and a slightly larger lot. The Cheatham County regulations for agriculture, we do not have a purely agricultural zone in the city. We're urban. But in the county, you have to have an 4-acre minimum if you have public water in an agricultural zone, 5-acre minimum if you don't have public water. And the original goal of that is if you have a well, if you don't have public water, you have a well, was to separate the septic system, take into account topography and other issues, water table, from your septic system being separated from your water source. So that rule is in place. The county recently updated their zoning ordinance. They don't have a specific lot requirement in anything other, size requirement in anything other than agricultural. So now they kind of look at it on a case-by-case submission to determine whether the lot is adequate. So that's the basics of that. The request, I have a couple of observations. They're requesting to rezone the entire parcel. My concern is we have 3 lots that are proposed, and you can see them on the map here, and then behind that is a subdivision plat, and I'm sure that the drafter is here and the owner is here, so they can better answer these questions. But I have in front of you, it's kind of hard to see. John, can we put that up on the screen? We can't. Okay, we can't put it on the screen. So you have the lot next to the road, and then you have 2 more lots, and there's a space in between. Adjacent to this property lies the golf club of BBI, just for informational purposes. Nothing within this, the smaller creek, is not in a map flood area. That came about during the last time your maps were updated in 2016 and adopted in 2018. So the request, my reservation and my recommendation to the Planning Commission is because we don't know what the purpose is for the rest of the vacant land, which is, I believe, the whole tract is 19.21 acres. I believe there's a reserve of about 15, 16 acres, 15.22 acres.
15.2?
Flip back to the
Yes.
other page. We don't have any idea what they propose there. And it will, they want the whole parcel rezoned. So if the whole parcel is rezoned to R1, there's the potential of a number of houses being built on that property. We're already struggling with traffic control and the width of the road over there. So I'm going to take a leap of faith, and that's why most of the residents have joined us tonight. And everybody will be given a time to respond, Mr. Summers. So again, the last email that I got was a request to rezone, recommend. We don't rezone, we're just recommending to the county the entire parcel. So if Mr. Summers has information that's different from that, we'll be happy to hear it.
Ma'am?
So that's
Yes, please.
How many minutes do I
right
get?
there.
How many minutes do I get?
2.5.
Just for information purposes, and help me, I'm not trying to rezone the whole place.
I'm sorry, Mr. Summers, you're gonna have to, the application that was filed indicates that they.
Okay,
you
well,
want to-
that was incorrect, and,
Well, let's,
So you're the
let's
applicant.
clarify.
So
Yeah,
You're
let-
the owner of the property, sir?
yes, I am Scott Summers, and I'm glad to be here in a less contentious manner. I
Thank
haven't
you.
met you yet, but
Thank you, I'm Noreen Hill.
DBI and I are like, but anyway. I love them, right, but anyway,
Mr. Summers, you'll have to address them, her,
Please,
or
yes,
the commission
thank you.
instead of the audience.
help me here, I didn't, all I was trying to do was get zoning on those three.
3 lots?
Correct, I want to keep that in a green belt, that's why we kept it at 15 acres.
Excellent.
Okay.
In my long-term goal, this is all, okay, no, let me just start here. This is all about a family here, okay? I'm trying to create a family compound.
Okay.
I have myself, my son, and my daughter. My son's here, my neighbors, and I want to thank my neighbors, those of you who did call me. This was a great time to catch up with the neighbors, okay? So, for or against, it was good talking to you, but I'm just trying to create 3 spots along that road there.
And that's the only request that you have to be changed from agricultural to R1 of those 3?
That is
Yes,
correct.
we'll need.
And that little .4 acres that I want, I don't care what it is. Yeah, it can be agriculture. I just want DBI to buy it. It's useless to me anymore. And I just wanted to plat on it
Okay.
if they would be kind enough to buy it. It's worthless to me anymore.
Alright, sir.
But the 3 lots, I have a son and a daughter, the 2-acre lots for my son. Judy's here, she would be the neighbor to that. I've talked to Salem, and they would love Mike to be their neighbor. The other one's for my daughter. They will share that driveway, that's what that 2 pieces is. And the 3rd piece, I want to create a piece for me to die in, okay? I want to build a little cottage there. I just buried my father. My mom
sorry,
probably
sir.
well, he was 102, okay?
Live good
And
life?
he lived till the last 4 days of his life. He had a helper taking care of him and a wife, and I mean, that's what I seek, okay? I don't want to live in an old folks' home. My mom's in an Alzheimer's center. I pay unbelievable, $100,000 a year for her to be there. I can build a house for that, and I want to build it accessible for me, and a wheelchair and a bed, and an extra bedroom for an attendant to live and take care of me, a nurse, whatever you want to call it.
So to simplify what we were looking at, what we're looking at is those three lots are all you're requesting.
That's
And
correct,
it's
and
not the
that's what I'm
it's
gonna
not the
do with
remaining
them.
15.2 at all.
None
Okay,
whatsoever.
that's
And-
great,
and-
and I appreciate your clarification.
Oh,
I'm sorry
God,
we
yeah.
didn't understand that.
Yeah, and it's not for me to sell. I want to put that 15 acres in a family trust that can never be sold, okay? I'm probably the senior, am I the senior citizen in the valley? Who's the oldest one? You or me?
St. Bill.
Jasper? Well, that's right.
Okay,
Jasper's older than Sam.
all right.
But
Thank you, I
anyway,
appreciate it.
I just, I'm not here to
And you did
destroy.
actually get more than 3 minutes.
Oh, am I done? Okay.
There's no limit on this.
If
I know, I'm
may,
teasing.
Madam Chairman,
I'm just,
Mr. Summers,
thank you.
But thank you, and do y'all have any questions about it?
Not about that.
I had no
clarified.
idea I'd stir up this much controversy, honestly.
No, that makes it very simple.
It was submitted from your representatives.
That's correct,
They
and
told
that's just
that-
miscommunication with
that
us.
They wanted
That's
the
great.
whole thing rezoned. So for the purposes of tonight's meeting, in consideration, we're going to have to, one,
Resubmit,
get his, no, not resubmit,
okay,
because it's not on the plat that way. It's
Okay.
just in the application and the discussion that went back into between your folks and the county.
okay.
So we'll have to get his consent, or he is gonna have to resubmit. We'll have to get his consent to only consider these 3 lots. Now,
And that's correct, that is all I'm seeking.
okay.
Great,
By
so
consent, do we just ask
do
right
we,
now?
Yes,
do we
it
have,
goes
do
in
we
the
have your
ballot.
consent to
You
You
go
have
leave
my
it?
consent, that's all I'm
Do
seeking.
agree.
So,
For-
Do these
for-
3 lots exist at the moment, or
I'm
is
sorry,
this
Pete.
all a concept, or do these 3 lots exist at the moment?
It's a concept.
It's a concept, so these 3 lots have to exist first, right?
They don't exist right now.
Well, it's a double-edged sword, and
Right.
they've got to perk first, and that's
Right.
gonna be the next
Right.
situation.
Okay.
They may not even perk, and I may not, this may be
So,
a
right,
moot
I mean,
issue.
I think that the thing that we consider is not just intent, but capability, you know, and
Right.
what we're doing, what it provides the opportunity to do. So just make sure we're doing this exactly how we need to do it, because I do understand that these things need to be subdivided and things of that nature before that can be considered.
That's correct.
But this is just, all we were doing here is making a
Right.
recommendation.
We're making a recommendation to
That's
the
correct.
county for the rezoning
That's
from
correct.
agriculture through for these specific
For those-
areas
that
on
is
your
correct.
property.
Well,
And you-
yeah,
and
that's
you-
right.
and
Just
you-
those
And you
three.
agree to that?
100%, I agree.
All right, that's what we need, thank you.
Thank you.
The other thing for the planning commission to consider, as we've discussed in rezoning within the city, once you rezone to R1 within this agricultural area, which the county does really frequently. It started out because people, when they borrowed money from the Farm Credit Service or got a mortgage, they didn't want to mortgage their house along with the farm. So they would ask to subdivide that 1 acre out with house on it so that it didn't become a part, or they didn't want to mortgage the farm in order to build the house.
Sure.
So that's where it generated. But there are literally hundreds of these in the county now, probably thousands of these, where you'll see these little 1 acre spots in the middle of a sea of agricultural land. But it does open up an area that is now purely agricultural to that. But for the purposes that he states, and you're gonna put this in a conservation, the remaining acre.
Julie?
Green
No,
belt.
and it's gonna stay in the green belt.
There's
It's
two
in it
ways to
right
do
now,
that. You
right?
can do that, put it in the green belt.
Well,
Mr.
it's in the
Mr.
green
Hargis
belt
could
and,
probably
yeah.
help you out with it.
No, it's in the green belt now. I'll have to pay the,
Currently is in Greenbelt.
yeah,
It's in
it
the
currently
green belt.
is, right.
Now, have you contacted the property assessor to determine what you have to do next
Yeah.
when you take these
You can
out?
fix it.
Oh, yeah, you gotta pay the back taxes on it, yeah.
Well, you still have 15 acres. 15 acres is the minimum. as
That's
we
correct.
learned.
That is
Okay.
correct.
So he has 15 remaining acres that will remain in, but these 3 have to be removed and reclassified for taxation purposes.
Correct,
That's
Right.
correct. Yeah.
yeah.
And I'll owe everybody some money.
Now, you said.
Can you add my
you
name to
wanted-
that? No,
I'm sorry, Lord. You said you wanted to serve this with just one road?
The 2 pieces, the 1 and the 2 acres, that's just one driveway.
Okay. The county has some peculiar
Oh, and I've talked to Robert about that.
regulations with how they do private.
Well, and
roads.
just so you know, the county is coming in and taking that bridge out. Once we get all these other bridges fixed, that one's coming out. And the road's gonna be straight, and Robert's aware that I wanna put a driveway there, because you gotta get enough line of sight there, but that curve's gonna be gone too, so. That's what I say, I'm just adding one driveway to the road.
Again, we appreciate your clarification.
When you're ready to subdivide, if this is approved by them, you will have to come back to this body to subdivide, not the county. It's
That's
in our
correct.
road
Everything
area,
is- I
so it will
understand
come
that.
back
Yeah.
to here,
Yeah,
once they
100%.
make a decision.
Now, I've
where
learned a
we
lot
should
in
name
this
it.
So is there any action
process.
we need to take?
We need to make a,
We need to make a motion.
was there?
He would like to speak.
Yes, sir, Mr.
He would
Rogers.
like to speak.
I use the podium.
You go get him.
Okay, this all sounds really good, and Scott
What's
is,
your name?
my name is Bill Rogers, 1660 South Harpeth Road, thank you. That's my wife, you guys that are married, you know that they're corrected. So, you know, Scott's making this sound like a family deal, and I'm sure it is, but the neighbors are very concerned about setting a precedent here in our area. From the city limits of Kingston Springs to Davidson County line, there are 27 property owners. There are approximately 25 property owners in Webb Ridge Road and Forest Road. There are another 8 property owners in Anderson Road. This is the area that our neighborhood association is concerned with, and we try to keep each other involved in this. So it's not a lot of people and not a lot of property in that particular area. There is not one piece of property in all of that that is 1 acre, except down right on the city limits of Mr. Kellen Moore's property. He no longer owns it, I don't think. He's in the process of selling it. Back in 2021, he had it rezoned. He had a 5 acre tract. He had 1 acre broken off of that and rezoned. Well, if y'all will remember 2021, we were right in the middle of, we couldn't I had to go online and streaming with the county to gripe about things, and that was really hard for me to do it online. But we were in the middle of COVID. We were in the middle of rezoning for the golf course. We were in the bridge closing down, which we fought for 3 years, the Brush Creek Bridge. We had no access down the road at all. In other words, what I'm trying to say is that 1 acre was snuck through there. I'm not saying intentionally, but nobody knew that it was happening. So we can't use that 1 acre as a precedent for our valley, which I know Scott would like to use that. He said, well, listen, we got it right down the road, 1 acre. I'm just saying it can't be a precedent. But if we agree to this, these 2 1-acre tracts, a driveway and a 2.59 acre tract over here, which is a lot of that's gonna be gone because it's gonna straighten the road out. We're setting a precedent for our area. Right now, forever, I've been there since the mid-70s, 5 acres has been the precedent. There's a lot of people here tonight that live on the 5 acres that Mr. Whitfield separated 50-something years ago. And up on Forest, Neil Carter, 5-acre tracts all through there. So we're a 5-acre precedent set valley, not 1 acre. I cannot envision our valley with 150 1-acre tracts with a trailer or a house on it. I just can't envision that at all. It would destroy our area. We're an agricultural area. I farm. Most of everybody here is horses, cows, chickens, something. Nobody lives on a 1-acre tract. The one that was rezoned, nobody lives on it. And it has been sold, and I'm sure that it won't, the people that buy it are not going to build a house on it. I just just begged y'all to not agree to this 1-acre division right here. It looks to me like if Scott wants to have a family commune there, which we have family communes in our area, it can be done so many other different directions than putting 1-acre tracts on road frontages. Now, if he wants to put someplace to bury it, bless his heart, I'm sure Scott will way outlive me. He can go back and put a 1-acre tract up on the hill. He's got a beautiful spot. He overlooks the river right there. It's a gorgeous place. Why 1-acre tract road frontage? I can only suppose that it's a nice place to sell someday and put a little house or a little trailer on. There's a lot of people here, and I'm sure a lot of them would like to say something, but in order to cut time, I would suggest maybe that we have a raise of hands of people that are against this and for it in the group.
I don't know what our precedent is on that. Pardon? I said, I don't know what our precedent
We
is
have
on
one
that.
hand raised, so that's.
I mean, if,
I still like to speak for that.
Yeah.
I still speak.
Yeah, I know there are other people who want to speak, but I know there are people here. There's a lot of people in this group that are against this,
sure.
and there's a lot of them that
Is
don't
everyone-
want to
is
say
everyone-
anything.
All right, yeah, we can go ahead and do the show of hands. For those people that live in this area and have the 5-acre tracts. Okay?
Or more.
I would,
Or more, yeah, or
I
more,
would suggest,
obviously, or more.
since we're talking about this rezoning to R1, that we have a show of hands of people that are for the rezoning of R1 or against the rezoning of R1.
What else
I mean,
would you like us to do?
that's what we're talking about.
What else would you like us to do?
I'm sorry? Well, I mean, that's just a suggestion. It looks to me like we need to sort of
I
stay on
am more
the,
than happy if anyone wants to speak to this, please feel free to come up and speak to it. I don't think that we would have necessarily a democratic vote here per se, given the people that are here supporting you and your joy in being able to meet with folks. So if anyone else wishes to speak, please speak now. Thank you for.
I believe,
Thank
one
you, sir.
more thing, please. I believe that if and I've been to 100 of these meetings, this has been done before, of showing hands. But anyway, thank you very
no
much.
problem with that. Thank you,
Thank
sir. If someone else would like to speak, please come up, give us your name, address.
Yep, my name is Amy Lyson. I'm at 192 Sugar Hill Lane, just off of Forest Drive, so very similar area.
Sure.
I echo Bill Rogers 1000%. It sets a precedence for other landowners to do the same thing, which we don't want in our valley. So I am against the rezoning.
Sure.
That's my 2 cents.
Great. Thank you. I appreciate that. Anyone else wish to speak?
I do.
Sure.
My name is Todd Morton. I live up on Webb Ridge Road, and it's kind of a double-edged sword right here, because if you approve his, I've got land on both sides of Webb Ridge Road, and I've got 23 acres total. I'll be glad to cut mine up and sell off lots and develop the heck out of it. If his goes through, I'm gonna do the same thing.
That's your privilege. Thank you, sir. Anyone else wish to speak?
Hello, my name is Christiana Harding. My husband David and I live on Forest Drive. We moved to this community specifically because of the regulations and zoning that was in fact intact. I moved to Spring Hill in '94 when it was a stop sign. One farmer sold a tract of land. There was not protections built in. That next parcel farm tract did not want to live next to a neighborhood. They sold. Someone else died. Oh, let's make some money. And we all know what Spring Hill is today and the lack of structure that the city, is really struggling to keep up with the traffic. It's completely changed the landscape of things because there was not this foresight. We all know what a beautiful area this is. Everybody wants to be here after COVID. Everyone really wants to be here. The land value has escalated exponentially. And we all moved here, most of us moved here, I would say. I specifically chose our 7 and some change acreage because we looked, what are the setbacks? There are minimums that are on the properties. It has to be X amount of square footage home, has 100-foot setbacks, no trailers are allowed. We specifically purchased our land because of the protections. We want to say this is where we want to die, Scott, and I want to know what it's going to look like. I don't want to see a strip mall down from me. The last place I lived, strip mall right down the street. I don't want to see that. I want to know all the neighbors around me. I want to know that we are invested in this community, and if we sell our land, we are going to be respectful to the neighbors next to us. It's not about can we get away with it? Are we going to be respectful to our neighbors, to our community, to the land that serves us? Are we going to serve the land? Are we going to make the fast buck? So I hope that we as a community bond together, do the right thing. Don't just look at that bottom dollar. Look at what does this look like for our neighbors, our scenery, and how are we protecting this for ourselves and for our children and our environment, for our farmers and those who would like to farm and keep it agricultural. I completely understand the compound, the family compound. It's such a sweet thing. We all know of a family compound that didn't work out very well, and the family hates each other. And it's a zoning nightmare. They can't sell the properties or the houses because they have locked themselves in. So it's a pipe dream. I'm sure your family will hold together more tightly, but you can use that as a motivator. You really have to look at the long-term implications and the precedent. I have acreages all around me, and I know that if somebody moved, the next person would come in, subdivide it, put a trailer. I know a neighbor here wants to do this and do that, and it's just such a slippery slope. So I hope that we're all mindful. This is our community. Once you give, you cannot take it back. So really be careful, think thoughtfully about what we're doing, but most importantly, don't do what's right for just you. Do what's right for this community and for your neighbors. And that's what being part of this community is about.
Thank you.
We have to look out for each other.
Thank you very much.
Hello, everyone. My name is Evelyn Rogers, and my husband Bill and we live at 1660 South Harpeth Road, and a lot of you probably know where we live because we have the Belted Galloways, black and white cows there. And we bought our farm, much to my dismay, because we were so poor and everything, in 1978. And we moved out here 15 years ago. I know a little bit about real estate because I sold residential real estate in and around the surrounding Nashville counties for 35 years. And I actually have sold quite a few parcels along South Harpeth Road to some of the people that are here tonight. Bill and I have about 70 acres. One of the reasons we enjoy living here is the character of the neighborhood and the lot size. And I'm crazy about Scott and Michael and all, but if Scott's request is granted, I fear we can be in for a change. And I'm opposed to Scott Summers' request to rezone his property because it violates our agricultural zoning designation. We're supposed to have 5 acres. We know all that. We've talked about this tonight.
Right.
If you have 4 acres, you can do 4 acres if you have city water, but 4 acres, like if he has 20 acres, he could say have 4 maybe, or 5, 4 or 5 acre lots if you wanted to, and anyway. But all up and down South Harpeth Road, except for the Betsy Scalen lot that was subdivided at 601 South Harpeth Road in April of 2021, they're all 4 or 5 acres.
Yes, ma'am. Do you have any additional information that we have not yet heard that you'd like to share with us?
I do want to say this. I do want to say
We have
this.
had several.
I do want to say this. Property owners have significant rights, but the rights are not absolute. And as Christiana said, they have to consider the rights of the neighborhood. And I think this zoning change should be denied. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your comments. Anyone else wish to speak?
I don't know that I have much more to offer other than my family moved to Kingston Springs about 5.5 years ago because we wanted to be in the country. And we chose our lot because it was deeded at 5.5 acres, and there were deed restrictions in the area that we bought. I'm at 180 Sugar Hill Lane, just off of Forest Drive. We have been dealing with bridge closures, as been mentioned, and I wouldn't begin to tell Scott what to do with his property other than there are zoning plats already in place. The bridge at Brush Creek has been closed on us. Landowner bought it, hadn't been kept up, and Williamson County decided to adopt that bridge, and it's going to be great when it's done, but my fear is the same as the others who have spoken. We're on 5 acres, we're raising a family there, we love the area, we love the fact that it's zoned as a state, and if this genie's let out of the bottle on 1 acre lots, I don't know that you could ever get it back in.
Thank you for your comments. Does anyone else wish to speak?
I will.
Sure. If anything you can add to it, sir.
I agree with all these people here, and Bill Rogers especially. I live at my name is Phil Kennedy. I live at 1026 South Harpeth. I got 33 acres there.
Mm-hmm.
I was born and raised on Charlotte Pike. And I wanted to have something out here that would be mine. And I've worked it hard, and I hope I keep my place up looking good. I think the world of Scott Summers and Michael, they're fabulous.
Sure.
This weekend, I went and looked at a farm down in Leaper Sport. And this doctor friend of mine had it for sale for 3.7. He said, "Would you give me 2?" I said, "No." He said, "I am hurting." They rezoned him, and right straight across the street from his driveway, he's got 2 double wides sitting there. Cars jacked up on blocks, beer cans for their selling aluminum. He said, "I have lost." I said, "Tell me, I don't need it, don't want any part of it."
Sure.
So
Okay.
That's why it is a slippery slope when we deal with it.
Yes, sir. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Sure. Yes, ma'am.
Hello.
Hi.
My name's Georgie Rigby, and I live on Poplar Creek Road, which is in the area, just literally near the covered bridge where South Harpeth runs past it, on the corner there. I'm actually in one of the properties, which is 7 acres, on the farm where the family fell out. So this is not personal at all to Scott, but my husband and I moved from England 3 years ago, and we moved to Franklin, and we spent a year, looking for the most idyllic spot, and it was almost as though we'd found gold at the end of the rainbow when we drove down South Harpeth Valley, and we just thought, this is for us.
I'm sure, I'm
we-
sure. Do
we-
you have any comments? I think we all understand
You
that
know,
you all appreciate the
well,
aesthetics of where you are.
Yeah, we bought it for the beauty, the tranquility, and the peace. And I think when plots are divided into smaller acreage, you can't stop that happening, So it is a precedent, and you can't stop that happening. So that's why we're here,
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. Anyone else have anything additional that they'd like to add to our conversation? Okay, thank you. So, we've heard a lot of comments, pro and con.
I do have one question, Mr. Chairman. How is rezoning of only a portion of the property allowed versus rezoning the entire property? Because we were under the understanding you had to rezone the entire property versus just the lots.
I will defer to our planner on that question.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna apologize to everybody out there. My hearing aids are in the shop, so you're gonna have to speak up.
You get to
Well,
yell at her.
if you
This
don't
is the
mind
only
coming up
time.
Here, so they'll know who they're talking to.
So my firm and I, we've never heard of, they're.
Yeah, if you'll go up here, it'll be easier. John can capture you on the record.
Your
My name is
and-
Alan Bronner. I work for Chaplin Associates representing Mr. Summers here. We just had a few questions. This is the first time we've dealt with Kingston Springs and Cheatham County in this manner. And we've never heard of rezoning only a portion of the property. We just wanted to know how allowing only the lots to be rezoned is allowed versus rezoning the entire parcel. How is that allowed?
So that was the reason, I apologize, but
No,
that
go
was
ahead.
the reason for submitting it for the whole thing to be
Okay.
rezoned. So this is the surveyor that submitted the sketch.
Okay, so
plat.
what you submitted versus what he has
Mr.
requested
Summers is.
are not
and
cohesive. They're not the same.
Right, if you don't.
Well, there was a
mind,
miscommunication between
Well,
Mr. Summers and I,
right.
and we just, my firm wanted to find out how that was allowed, because this is the first time we've ever heard of doing it this way.
And would you like for me to address that?
I would, please.
It happens every day,
Okay.
and it happens all over the county. I have a couple of observations. I don't have a personal feeling about this one way or the other. I look at the rules, I look at the regs, I make recommendations to them. But there are a few things that this audience is not privy to or may not have ever been told. The state of Tennessee is adamant about right to farm. And they have 19 separate statutes that regulate what we can do and how we can come to bear on agricultural property. As an example, how many of you, and I'm gonna ask for a show of hands, how many of you are aware that I can own a farm, let's say my farm is 35 acres, and I can build as many houses on it as I want in order for my workers to have housing without your consent, without your control, without your input. Farming in Tennessee has a very specific definition. It's 15 acres. You have to produce a saleable crop. The other thing that many people are not aware of, because the state doesn't do a really good job of letting us know when they pass new rules, we just kind of find out ambling down the path somewhere. One of the other things that a lot of people don't understand is you can't apply restrictions to agricultural land for setbacks. Your zoning ordinance is useless. The state statute is a real simple 5-sentence statement. You cannot apply zoning restrictions to agriculturally used property, period. So the insulation that you used to have is predicated on an appellate case that happened in Houston County, Tennessee. They started with the maize so they could earn extra money to feed the farm, school children came and went through the corn maze. They had other activities where you learned about farming and how it was done, which furthered the educational outreach that the state adopted. And then at some point in Houston, Houston County, depends on who you ask, Houston, like live and living here, they decided to have music festivals to attract people to the farm so they could consume their farm-to-table goods and the other things they were doing. And the neighbor next door was not a fan because it was loud. I mean, it was on stage, big speaker, music. It went all the way to the Tennessee Appellate Court, where the court ruled that music festivals were not agricultural activity. The legislature promptly reconvened and declared that music festivals that attracted people to the agricultural property in order to partake of the view and the vista and farming activity is now an allowed agricultural activity. So just a little history on zoning and agriculture. For those of you that live on farms, farms in Tennessee require 15 acres contiguous in order to be a farm. You have to produce something that is commercially merchantable, saleable. It has to be at least $1,500 per year in order for you to qualify as a farm. You can put it in the green belt at 15 acres, but it's not a farm unless it's a working farm. So just so you know, your state legislature, anytime somebody complains, they reconvene, a new law comes out. There are 19 of them. The Farm Bureau puts out a really comprehensive list of these things. So while I understand all of the comments about I bought it for peace and tranquility, I'm going to ask my second show of hands. How many of you were born and raised in that area?
Okay. What area?
1, 2.
What area? What
Three.
area? Kingston Springs?
But it's not really relevant.
Where your
I'm
homes
just
are.
trying to-
Where your homes are.
I'm just asking a question. No development existed at one point, right? Because Native Americans occupied the land, they just migrated to another place when they needed to move. So every single structure, building, or use that occurs today occurs because someone else came to that place. So while I understand your ire, I also understand it's a very difficult thing for governments, local governments, with all the restrictions the state puts on us, to balance what you would like to see as opposed to your neighbor's property rights to do what he wants to do. It's a really difficult thing. You heard me say in the opening, if you approve this, you're setting a precedent, right? That precedent has been set in every subdivision in this town, every subdivision in the county. Every time the county allows someone to subdivide off the 1 acre with their house on it so they don't have to mortgage the farm to build the house. It happens consistently, regularly, and routinely. This body, as this very complex issue in front of them, is a recommending body. If I were a betting person, I would say regardless of their recommendation, the county is going to do what it wants. We are a recommending body. We have no control over that. Mr. Summers has expressed on a public record that this is for the purposes of family division, so that his children can live on that property. The remaining 15 acres remains in the Greenbelt, which is an agriculturally driven taxing structure in the state of Tennessee. So, if the county approves this, regardless of the input of this body, and I don't know what their input's going to be, we have no control over that. What then happens is the subdivision element, the actual dividing of the lots, comes back to this body because they have to use our subregs. And they're much stricter than the ones in the county. Much stricter. We require much more because it's an urban environment with lots more people. So while I understand the conversation is taking place, if Mr. Summers was operating a farm, he would be able to put 20 migrant houses on that farm if he needed to for his workers. If you're a family member and you're associated, you can have a house. If you drive out of Springfield on your way to Kentucky, you will see that occurring on farms all over the place. So while I understand it, you came here from another environment, moved here for a particular lifestyle. and you found your piece of land that provided you with that lifestyle, but they have to make a decision based on, is this something that occurs in the county? And
I have
it
a question.
does.
I have a question.
Pardon?
You said if the land is a farm,
Right,
and that requires how many acres? 15?
right. If,
Then Mr. Summers could build anything he wanted there because it would not be restricted
as
because it's,
many houses as he would like,
therefore why would we need to, therefore why would we need to rezone it?
Farm, that's correct.
Because he's not operating a farm.
He's not operating a farm.
He would have to be operating a farm, making a
But if
profit
he
off of
were,
the product.
so I'm not leaning one way or the
Oh,
other.
okay.
I'm simply telling you that if someone
Okay.
owns 100 acres next door to you, and they operate a farm, they can build as many houses on as they want, the county has no control, neither does the city,
Operate a
the
farm.
state does.
Do they have
So,
to prove that?
I would advise you, there is a farm.
One
bureau-
moment, I see you, I'll get to you in a second, okay? Thank you.
I would advise you to go on the internet, without my input, look up the Farm Bureau list of restrictions on local governments on farm property.
Yes, there's a gentleman in the back that wishes to speak. Yes, sir, stand up, please, we need your name and address.
My name is Gus Grody, I'm 6337 Anderson Road. My question is, if you own 20 acres in Cheatham County, can you build 3 houses?
You cannot, unless you're farming.
Unless you're farming,
How many houses can you build on 20 acres?
unless it's rezoned.
Unless it's rezoned, you can't. So you wanna know, I don't have any idea. As I said at the start of this meeting, the county recently updated their zoning ordinance. And has anybody looked at the county's ordinance? Because I would advise you to look at it.
My confusion is, I heard a lot about 5 acres.
Correct.
In the agricultural.
Right now.
Zone. So if he's got 20 acres.
He's got 20 acres, he could build 4-acre lots, and he could build 5 houses today, without even coming.
So why don't we just do that? Agriculture.
Well, that's Mr. Summers' decision, but we appreciate your point and understand it, thank you. Yes, ma'am. You were raising your hand?
Oh, me.
Yeah.
What constitutes the farm then? So how?
I'm sure there's a IRS tax basis.
What constitutes farming?
Yeah, $1,500
From a state
a year.
perspective, 15 acres,
Yeah.
Just a minute,
contiguous.
just a minute.
The state definition of
I see.
of agricultural activity. Mr. Rogers, if you'll give me just a second to answer.
I'm
the
not saying
question.
anything. I'm
He
just
doesn't
having a hand
have
up.
15 contiguous acres producing a commercial crop. In other words, it has to be a sellable crop of $1,500 per year, which isn't a lot, but it's $1,500. So that is the state definition. A lot of people confuse green belt or green space with farming, but the state statutes are very clear on what constitutes a farm. So if you have multiple acres, I don't know how many you have, but if you have chickens and, you have cows or you have, whatever on that land, you still do not qualify according to the state of Tennessee as a farm.
Because you have to have 15 acres for $1,500. Yes, sir.
I don't understand why we're even discussing this farming. He's not farming. The proposal here is to rezone 3 lots, 2 1-acre lots and a 2.59
Yes, sir,
acre
we
lot.
understand that.
That is
So,
correct.
I don't even, I understand that Ms. Armstrong is instructing us farmers on what we could do, but it's not relevant to what the decision that this commission has to make. Your decision is whether we're gonna rezone this to R1 and leave the rest of it in Greenbelt, which he wants to do.
We understand that, we've also allowed many people to speak on many subjects, and we're.
Okay, it looks like we got
allowing
way off of track there. I mean, we
Not
were
quite.
talking about building 50 lots on.
Thank you for your input.
Lauren, I apologize, but if I may, the reason that it came up is because a number of people stepped up and talked about owning a farm. And they thought within that owning a farm, there was some insulation that was afforded to them. There's not.
What, will you clarify, I'm sorry, Sharon,
Sure.
15 acres and getting $1,500 of income, sellable income a year,
That's
that is a
correct.
farming. Okay, what is a green belt? You have to have 15
The
acres for a
green belt is land that is reserved, that is not going to be used for development, which provides you with a tax break.
So
Because
they
it's not being
coincide.
developed, so those are not the same things. There are tons of properties that are in the green belt that are not farms. So while I understand, Mr. Rogers, we have one issue before us today.
That is correct.
But I wanted people to understand that when they're saying, I own a farm, it's
We
it's
also been
different.
talking about 5-acre tracts, as our.
Thank you. We,
5-acre tract is your.
okay,
your
is there
minimum.
anything that anyone contribute that will be additional information to what we have already discussed? Yes, you may.
So again, Mr. Summers is only producing 3 lots, 2 1-acre lots and 1 2.5-acre lot, and the rest is to remain in Greenbelt, which will be maintained as Greenbelt, that 15 acres. And the property will stay as it stands.
But I would also proffer Mr. Summers, in that case, would also be able to take that out of the green belt. That's a voluntary submission in, a voluntary submission out of the
Right.
green belt.
There's nothing
So,
restricted.
okay, so you know, there's no guarantee
I want to close the
that
discussion.
property stays in the green belt.
I mean,
Yes, sir.
the way I see it is, he can do anything he wants, he's just gonna have to give that green belt up. So, I mean, if I wanted to develop that land bad enough, I would give it up.
I'm sure we can all just
I mean,
have
that's what it
ideas
is.
of how we
He
could, and
wants
what
it
we
both
would,
ways. He
all
wants
of
his
that.
cake and eat, and be able to eat it too.
That
That's
is
what
one
comes
man's
down.
opinion. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. I do. Okay? Are we through with discussion? Does
I think
anybody
we're
else
good.
need to hear anything? Okay,
Unless other people have a comment, the discussion now is planning commission only.
okay. Do appreciate everyone being here. All right.
So if you recommend this forward, it is in your growth area. It's in your urban growth boundary. So that's the first test that you have to have when you want to subdivide property. Is it in a growth plan? This is your extraterrestrial urban growth boundary around your city, with the assumption that sometime within the next 5 to 10 years, these properties will probably annex into your city. It's the reason why some of the larger tracts were taken out when we did it, because 24 years, nothing happened, right? So your second question is, while
So
you
where-
are
A question, please.
Sure.
Where is the edge of the?
urban growth boundary,
Urban growth boundary.
I'll have to get you a map, but it's contingent to this area.
But it
our
doesn't,
urban
it
growth
doesn't encompass
boundary-
a lot of this area, right?
It did not change,
It-
other
it-
than
it
we
is.
removed.
It is right
Our
there.
growth boundary was not increased. I'm sorry,
It was actually
comment
decreased.
is done.
It was
Right.
decreased, yeah.
But the urban growth boundary did not increase anywhere. It decreased. We removed the ranchettes for the reasons stated earlier. So it's the same urban growth boundary it's been since 1999 when the maps were drawn.
Right.
If it's in your urban growth boundary, that's your first test. The second test is, are you setting a precedent in a given area that has not been previously set? So your urban growth boundary is not your only consideration. Every single piece of property here at some point was a farm.
Right.
So while I understand the argument, the question for you becomes infrastructure. So your considerations are not, while I have heartburn, I moved from where I used to live because of development, right? I understand that, but your questions are, can you support the traffic? Can you provide, or can the county provide sufficient infrastructure, fire suppression, policing, all the other things that come with development? And are you setting a precedent in this area? So the only way, can we have access to a map maybe? Nope. Nope, okay, we're just out of.
John, you've been a big help today.
So, the question for you becomes, in this area where people have expressed displeasure with the idea, agriculture is defined as 15 acres or more, contiguous for farm use. That's the state law.
What's the definition for the green belt? It's the same?
The green belt can either contain, Commissioner Hargis, it can contain agricultural property. But the green belt can also be granted because you have a an agreement with the state that you're not going to develop that property, you're gonna leave it in its natural state. If you don't mind me using yours, you're adjacent to a flood area, you have flood area on your property. We're a no build in the flood area community, so you elected, because you cannot really develop it, to put it in, and it would be inappropriate to offer for development because it's in a AE flood area. So you placed it in the green belt, which is appropriate because you, other than it's there, you derive no useful benefit.
Right.
And almost all land use litigation is based on peaceful and useful enjoyment of your property. So if you can't use it,
So the people that have like a 7.5 tract,
7.5 acre tract,
right, is that
a
in
farm,
the, no, it's not a farm.
It is in the agricultural zone.
It is.
it is an agricultural zone because the county, and this all started once growth started becoming heavy in this area and in Tennessee, the discussion started taking place. The county zones the property as agricultural. Even though it doesn't meet the state definition, which evolved over a period of about
Right.
20 years.
But according to the county, it is all agricultural within that area, in the agricultural zone.
In
So
this
the minimum
particular
acreage there
case-
for a house is 5,
We have an R1A zone. If you have 3 acres, you can keep horses,
which is
right?
what we're looking at.
But you still don't qualify as a farm,
Right.
as agricultural activity.
Okay. Any further discussion, question?
No, I mean, I think the one point that should be clarified is, for everyone here, no matter what decision we make, you're going to still have to go to the county.
That's correct.
Because
Yeah,
the
that's
county
the
actually
bottom
makes
line.
the decision.
That's the bottom line, is that the county will make that decision, and then based on that, if there's any development at all, it comes back here. Unless you've got something new to add.
That's a question.
Sure.
When it does go to county, do they allow people to come to speak into that? Is that an open meeting?
Will the county allow people to speak into it when it goes to the county?
They do.
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much.
They do.
Okay.
Do you have to get on the agenda ahead of time?
I'm sorry. I'm
You
sorry.
You don't
have
have
the
to,
agenda
you know,
ahead of time.
Do you have to get on the
the
agenda
agenda.
ahead of time, is what I'm
Well,
asking?
the county, yeah, well, this will go, you know, this decision, whatever it is, will go to the county, and then they will have to put it on the agenda.
They're not real
But will
fans
they
of public
have to
speaking at the
get on
county,
the
so they
agenda?
do require
To
you to
speak?
sign up ahead of time.
I don't
I
know.
don't know what the day
That's
is.
what I was wondering.
I'm still trying to sort their new zoning changes.
Yeah, okay. All right, we've had a lot of discussion. Again, I appreciate everyone being here and being respectful in their comments. We do appreciate that very much. So, with all of that discussion, do we have a motion one way or the other?
Unless they have any
Unless-
other questions.
Do you have any other questions about it?
Sounds like to me, you're basically trying to get these individual parcels divided out for the purposes you stated. The biggest difference is you're going from, with the agriculture area, to where you can have either a 4 or a 5 at a minimum. So now we're looking at setting a precedence for being able to establish a 1 acre. And having a 1
Correct.
acre is what everyone is upset about.
That is
So
correct.
I'm just putting it all out there.
That summed up
Yeah.
an hour's worth of conversation, yes.
Right.
Okay, so do we have a motion, one way or the other?
Well, I got one other question before we make a motion. So any of these properties that are not in the urban growth area are not subject to coming to this
Correct.
board
That's it.
anyway for any
Right.
change,
That
right?
is
For a
correct.
1 acre lot. So if they own property outside that, they gotta go to the county straight. Is that correct?
Right.
And
They do
then
not
the
come to
county has
us.
to decide, they'll let you
And-
divide it less than 5 acres.
And the county's already set a precedence to do this. And-
But we have not.
Correct. And he is at the edge of the city, whereas for those of you that are in the county, it's already a precedence to do it. Nothing that we can do.
Not in our area.
And we do not have within the city a purely agricultural zone. We have R1A. We don't have agricultural zones in the city. So, totally different circumstance here. But zoned R1.
And we are only recommending.
Pardon?
We are only recommending, the county is gonna make the decision that the county is gonna make.
That's correct. At the county commission, not their planning commission. It doesn't go to their planning commission. It goes directly to the county commission.
So if we reject this idea today, then he can't even take it to the county for
Oh, no, he'll
consideration.
still go to the county.
He still has to.
And-
It's
He
just
still has to.
Asking
In
whether we.
about,
So,
At the end of the day, this is much ado about nothing.
nothing, okay, that's what I'm getting
in
at.
about 99% of the cases, regardless of the recommendation, they rezone.
They do what they do.
That's the reality.
Well, it seems to me it's pretty much the county's decision anyhow.
It is, but
right?
we're required by law to render an opinion. So you can recommend either way, and that's true of your own city commission. If the planning commission makes a negative recommendation on a rezone,
Oh, yeah, I
a
know.
majority of the city commissioners can overturn it,
Exactly.
whatever your recommendation is. So you're a recommending body only. Because the state says you have to.
I make a motion that we do not recommend it. I just feel that that is an agricultural area. It's been that way. I don't know whether I want to set that precedence over there.
I second.
Okay, so we've had a motion and a second not to recommend rezoning this area from agricultural to R1. Any further discussion among us?
Roll call for this one.
Okay, roll call vote, please. John?
Sorry. Keith Allgood,
Aye.
Tony Thompson is absent. Tony Gross,
Yes.
Mike Hargis.
So what is the motion again?
The motion is that we will not approve, we will not
Just
recommend.
to deny.
To deny, yeah.
Okay, I got you. Now you're waiting for me to vote, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I support that.
Okay, thank you. Laura Hill,
I am supporting the motion.
Mike
Not
Patton is
to.
absent. Craig Kitch is absent. Marie Spafford,
Aye.
Bob Stoll.
Aye.
Okay?
So
Motion
everybody
is
out there
denied.
understands the motion was to
Motion is
deny.
denied unanimously. Okay.
But that doesn't stop you from taking it to the county.
No.
It's
It
the
doesn't
county.
stop you either from
Right.
putting four houses on it with 5 acres apiece.
Okay,
Okay.
discussion of core drill and letter sent by Mr. McPherson. No vote or formal action can be taken by the planning commission as the letter was not received in time to advertise the request of the applicant.
Yes, ma'am. We discussed this briefly earlier. The planning commission in November of last year required Mr. McPherson to do a core drill.
Correct.
13 locations on site were identified. Most of those areas were where buildings would go or in areas where fill was deposited outside of the approved grading plan. He was also to furnish a lab report for what was in the ground and to ensure that it was properly compacted. We had 2 complaints. And when I went to renew his grading permit, because it was time to do that, it was expiring during that same period, I observed construction demolition debris.
Right.
Chimney, foundation materials that were made back in a generation when they used formaldehyde in the cure. I observed copper pipe, PVC, a number of other things. So at that point, I issued, as the regulations require, an immediate stop because he was outside the confines of his permit. Then the planning commission gave him specific directions. It is my understanding from the geotechnical firm that the core drill and the lab reports were completed some weeks ago.
Right.
They have not been provided to the city.
Therefore, we cannot do anything.
You have
forward.
this was not received in time to advertise it, so it's not been advertised. This is discussion only. It's why it's under
Sure.
discussion item. So where we are, we'll give an update. This is another standing item that stays on the agenda. You can't take action. The stop can't be lifted until the core report is received. and reviewed by the engineer and
Right.
planning staff to make sure that
So basically nothing changed, right?
Right.
nothing's
We're
really
setting up
changed.
for opportunity for-
Other than you all received a letter.
Project representative, do I have opportunity to speak?
So, Kyle Schneider, engineer of record, civil engineer. I cannot speak to the soil report. That is the geotechnical engineer.
Right.
I've been made aware that I believe it has been completed, being reviewed, and it should be submitted to the city consultant engineer shortly for his review. My discussion was on the February decision to not allow the renewal of the PUD plans.
If I may, I apologize, Mr. Snyder. This is not on the agenda tonight. No consideration can be given to the plans until he submits the corridor report and it's reviewed by staff. And that was the question that Ms. Spafford asked during that meeting, is if he provides the core report and it comes out clean, can you resubmit? Unfortunately, his grading permit and his plan approval occurred in the same month, because they were both approved in the same month. So during that meeting, this body, on staff recommendation for both the engineer and the planner, did not reapprove his plans because we can't allow him to move forward until we know what's in the soil and whether it's sufficiently compacted. So while you may have this discussion, the only thing that can occur to cure the flaw for Mr. McPherson is the provision of that report.
So the only thing that I'd like to say is that I went back and listened to the February meeting. There was contradictory statements made by city staff. City staff said that the plans would expire 12 months after, with no utility work being performed on site. The city staff said that plans would expire at the end of the month, and city staff said that the plans had expired. So, contradictory statements. As for the utility plans not having any work done on them for 12 months, city staff had their consulting engineer send plans to myself, and I had revised those plans on September 22nd, 2023.
I'm sorry, Colin, I have to ask you to speak up.
The consultant engineer sent me utility plans that needed to be revised September of 23,
Right.
less than 12 months ago. So less than 12 months ago, work was being done on utility plans. So as we see it, the utility plans weren't up for expiration anyways. As the engineer of record, we had no notice that our plans were expiring from city staff at all.
Mr. McPherson was notified, Kyle.
As the engineer of record, I'm stating on public record, we were not notified. I'm also stating
Understood.
that it was not 12 months from a stop work order to when these plans expired. You yourself were out on site
The
August.
stop work order issue, Kyle, you're conflating issues here and discussions. The plans were approved by the planning commission. They have a 2-year window under the PUD agreement.
You
for
said in the February
substantial-
meeting it was
Let me
a
finish.
1 year.
I'm going to answer the question
Okay.
regardless. Those plans have a 2-year window upon approval for substantial progress on construction to take place. He's still in the grading phase. He has 0 permits for construction. There are a number of articles on the lot. There is piping on the lot. There's a number of other things on the lot. None of them have been installed. None of them. So the plans themselves may be impacted by what happens with the grading plans and core drill. I don't know what's in there, neither does anybody else, what he's used for fill. So all of that, if you weren't notified, Mr. McPherson was notified well before the deadline for that to happen.
I believe he was notified on February 1st or so, and the meeting was February 9th. I have an email, I don't necessarily have it
Mr.
right here in front
McPherson
of
was
me.
notified that his plans were coming up for revision. Again, you're confusing the grading permit with approved development.
I'm talking about, in the February meeting, the PUD plans were denied renewal.
That is correct.
Those PUD plans
Passed.
shouldn't have been up for renewal anyways. They shouldn't have been up for expiration. You said it yourself that utility work needed to be done within 12 months. Utility work was being done up until August when he received the notice of violation.
No, the grading plan was being done.
Grading and utilities go together.
They are not. No utilities have been installed on that property.
With all due respect, yes, they do. You cannot install utilities until you have your site graded.
As long as he is filling, and he's still filling the property, until he gets to final grade, there have been pipes there, and that was a question I asked him, why have you not started the utility installation? He said, I'm still taking in soil. Until he accomplishes the rough grading and is signed off on, he can't
Yes,
move
he is
forward.
aware of that. He is aware of that. You issued a notice of violation, stop work order in August. I went out the next day, I did a site inspection as requested.
Right.
So one of your stipulations was the site engineer needs to go out there and do a site visit. The next day, I went out there and did a site visit. You requested updated utility plans in September, we did that. You requested updated grading plan, we got that to you. The only thing he's lacking is the soil report. Yes, he is still
That's
lacking it.
significant.
That is
That's
significant.
significant, and
My-
that's why he has a stop
I
order.
myself, I am not a soil engineer.
Right.
Is any members of planning commission soil
If you're
scientists?
if you're
I don't
displeased
understand.
with what's happening here, speak to him about getting that report to us, and then we can all move forward. We don't have to have this discussion.
All we're saying is that we have been making progress with the site to take away the renewal of the PUD plans, essentially making us start from zero, was unfair and essentially uncalled for, as we had been making progress on utilities.
You have, but we still don't have what we require to move forward.
Yes.
And until we have that, we can't move forward, and this conversation is moot.
Kyle, while I
Again,
understand.
the soil testing was a stipulation of the notice of violation. It had nothing to do with the PUD plans. You said it yourself in the February meeting. These are two separate issues.
They completely are, but his PUD approval for the preliminary plans was granted when?
Sometime in 2022, I believe.
I'm sorry?
Sometime in 2022, I believe.
That is correct. So it is up for renewal. They chose.
As long
and
as work was being done on the
2
site.
years, 2024, it was up for renewal. And in
You were under a
February,
stop work
it was
order.
not.
How is progress being made if you're under a stop work order?
Progress was being, the
You
requested
had-
items were being.
You had to fulfill the requirements to get rid of the stop work order to make any progress on your project.
Yes, the original stop work order had 5 or 6 items. We had 1 item remaining.
You had not met the requirements. I don't know where this is going awry. You didn't meet the requirements. You could not be making progress. Your 2 years were up. That's the bottom line. That's where you stand right now. I hate it, and we've already went through this whole soul deal one other time. We've spent a ton of time on this project.
Not to mention
This is where we
city
are.
engineer and
And
planning
that's
and
what you
everyone
have
else.
to meet.
I think it's important for our newer members of the planning commission to understand. The original approved plans, there is still no PUD agreement because all of the items necessary to put a PUD agreement together have not been completed.
The PUD plan.
But
It's
the
a PUD,
original
yeah, it's a plan, it's
plans
not an
for
agreement.
construction and the layout of this
Thank you.
development
Thank you,
were
sir.
approved in February of 2022. They have a 2-year window with a request for renewal. You want to just have a recess so that folks that want to go can go? That way they don't have to sit through this. So, I
We appreciate
advised Mr. McPherson, when I visited the site, in order to renew his grading permit, which is a 1-year permit, I advised him then because coming up for renewal.
How's your Cadillac done? You let Amy let you drive it yet?
Well, yeah, every now and then I put gas in and clean it up a little bit.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Oh, you're fine, you're fine.
Appreciate you being here.
It's great to see democracy at work.
Thank you.
Good night.
Night. Drive safe.
Mr. McPherson was advised during the site visit for the renewal of his grading plan. that his preliminary plans that have been approved in 2022 were going to expire in 2024. So he was advised of that. There's a lot of language in what you received that seems to indicate that he was not advised or not counseled. That is absolutely not the case. What he chooses to tell his development staff is entirely up to him. But he was advised that that expiration date was coming up. We received 2 complaints. Those complaints were founded.
Right.
The Planning Commission gave him direction as to what to do to rectify those complaints. The core drill reports have not been provided. In February, his PUD, which he was advised of in November, were going to expire in February. That was part of the conversation on site that day.
So there's no formal
Along
record?
with an acknowledgement by Mr. McPherson that he screwed up, that he shouldn't have done what he did. What you've been working towards is to rectify the additional is it 6.1 or 9.1 acres that he exceeded its grading permit?
I think it's 0.6 acres.
With fill and compaction.
That's in green space.
And
It's not
again-
underneath building foundations as you.
I'm sorry, what?
It is in green space, not under building
It's
foundations as you
irrelevant. He
previously said.
exceeded his permit, period. Then he had to go back to TDAC, I believe, and submit
Yes,
some
updated.
plans in order to get approval for that. Because the state requires you, when you change the configuration of your permit, you're required to go back to the state in order to get reapproval. All of that was ongoing. So at the night that the discussion was held, it was time to either renew or not renew the preliminary set of plans. And by the way, this is the second set of plans for this project. The first set were approved, everything was ready to go. We were working on the PUD agreement. Mr. McPherson changed his mind about what he wanted to do.
Right.
So, without calling names, the original complaint came from someone who worked on the site. The second complaint came from a planning commissioner. Both were investigated. This is our second pathway down this. I don't know whether the soil is suitable or not, because I don't have a report, neither does the engineer. Mr. Snyder also contacted the city engineer this week to ask him about the stop work order, and was told by the city engineer to come back to planning because you are the approval body. We don't approve or deny plans, this body does.
But you give recommendations to
So
planning
again,
commission.
until we get.
But I think you've discovered that we all make our own decisions.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm just, if you want to end the conversation, that's fine. The February meeting was unfair as this engineer of record, I was not able to be present. You had a review of the engineering plans there. Again, information presented in that meeting by Ms. Armstrong made it unclear why the plans were up for expiration. In my opinion, work was being done on site. Yes, Mr. McPherson understands that work that was overstepping, not uncommon on construction sites, by the way, not uncommon that you go outside your limit of disturbance.
Then it should not be uncommon to be able to go ahead and correct that issue by going.
Well, it's also not
uncommon.
it's not common that a soil report is requested as well on a private development where the suitability of the soil, ultimately, if this site gets built, has no bearing on the city. The city is not liable for it or anything.
No, just the people that live there.
Just people that live there, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
And the people
that's
that
all,
own the property.
right? Just the people that live there. Their houses get to crack and fall, or they can have problems with radon or whatever. Just the people that live there are affected by this. Other than that, it doesn't matter.
And whatever runs off of that property onto other properties.
Okay, this is discussion. Do we have anything else to add to it? Because this will be
No.
on the agenda next month, right?
That's correct, but I do want to make a couple statements.
Okay, be brief,
Before
please.
we end this, just for clarity, it is not unfair to issue a stop when someone for the second time on a project is depositing fill that is unsuitable on a site. The soil is not supposed to be stored on phase one. That's one of the restrictions, and that is where it was visible from the road that construction debris from a demolished structure was on the site. So again, if his team is not notified, it's not the city's responsibility, that's Mr. McPherson's responsibility. You cannot move forward at this juncture until we get that report that you've required. So there's really nothing we can do tonight. The work that's going on the site is survey work and other work that is required to update the set of plans for the TDEC submission in order to correct the permit. It has zero to do with the deadline that expired that he was informed of. Those are the last comments that I have for the evening.
All right, thank you for this discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, the agenda is complete. Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Motion carries.